My 35-year-old son stood on the porch of the house I paid for with 40 years of sweat, looked me in the eye, and told me I was no longer welcome inside. I froze on the cold concrete steps, my hands trembling around the single canvas bag he had packed for me. Inside that house was every memory of my late wife, Martha, and every wooden beam I had restored with my own calloused hands after working second shifts at the local automotive plant. I spent decades sacrificing my own comfort, wearing worn-out work boots and skipping vacations, just to ensure my boy had a debt-free college education and a secure start in life. But seeing my own flesh and blood stand there with a cold, detached look, while his newly wedded wife stood behind him holding the deed I had foolishly signed over last month, a chilling realization hit me like a physical blow. Nothing about my sacrifices mattered to them, and the father who gave them everything was now just an unwanted tenant, standing in the rain. Back when Martha and I bought this small property in the late 70s, we didn't care about market values or equity. We built our life on simple, old-school American values: hard work, quiet respect, and total devotion to family. When cancer took Martha 10 years ago, I promised myself I would protect our son, David, no matter what it cost me. I worked double time, cooked his meals, and kept our home warm and safe. A few months ago, after David got married, he convinced me that transferring the house title to his name would protect my life savings from future medical bills and simplify my estate. I trusted him completely. I believed that old-fashioned family loyalty still meant something in this world. I took his word as gospel, signed the legal documents on my workbench, and handed him the keys to my legacy. I buried my doubts, believed his promises that I would always have my private room downstairs, and gave up total ownership of my life's work. But as I stood outside that locked door yesterday afternoon, watching the rain streak down the porch light, my years of quiet patience turned into terrifying clarity. I didn't scream, and I didn't break down like a defeated old man. I took a deep, steady breath, composed my thoughts, and knew in my gut that I wasn't walking away into the cold without fighting for my dignity. I quietly walked down the driveway and drove my old pickup truck to a small diner 2 miles away. I sat in a quiet booth, ordered a cup of black coffee, and opened my notebook. I stayed calm, but I already knew what my next move was going to be. What I uncovered over the next 24 hours made my stomach turn. David hadn't just decided to downsize my space. He and his wife had already put my home on the real estate market to clear their own heavy personal debts. But in their greedy rush to push me out, they made a critical, fatal oversight. Decades ago, when Martha and I built the rear garage workshop, I had registered the property under a specific life estate clause that required my written consent for any third-party sale or physical eviction, a document my original lawyer had locked away in a private county vault. The anger inside me didn't turn into a loud, hysterical argument. It turned into a quiet, cold calculation. My son had used my grief and trust to construct his financial safety net, while expecting me to quietly disappear into a state-run facility. Instead of pleading with him or causing a scene in front of the neighbors, I met with my longtime legal advisor early the next morning. We dug up the original land records, verified the active life estate clause, and gathered bank statements showing that I had personally covered all property taxes and structural repairs for the last 30 years. I didn't call the sheriff immediately. I walked back up that front porch afternoon, laid the legal notice directly on the kitchen table, and gave David a quiet choice: face an immediate court injunction for elder fraud and unlawful eviction that would freeze his bank accounts, or sign a legally binding revocation returning total ownership of the property back to me. Within 48 hours, his attorney advised him to yield. Justice wasn't flashy. It was quiet, brutal, and effective. With the legal paperwork finalized, the locks were changed back to my private key. My home was secured, the unauthorized real estate listing was pulled down, and my sanctuary was restored. However, I am a man of quiet pride. I never wanted to ruin my son's future, nor did I take pleasure in putting him in his place. I made sure the legal resolution gave him a fair window to secure his own apartment, keeping his financial independence intact while firmly reestablishing my boundaries. Protecting my home wasn't about revenge or flexing power. It was about honoring the honest, selfless sacrifices Martha and I made when we built this life from the ground up. Now, I sit in my quiet living room, not as a helpless victim, but as a 70-year-old man carrying the heavy weight of a broken family bond. David has moved across town with his wife, and the silence in this house feels heavier than ever before. The immediate threat to my home has been resolved, and the deception was brought to light. But life at my age isn't a television show where you just pretend 40 years of history didn't end in heartbreak. Fixing my legal rights was easy, but repairing the shattered trust between a father and his only child is a wound that law books cannot heal. Yesterday evening, as I sat on my porch watching the sunset, I looked at Martha's old rocking chair and faced a question that has kept me awake ever since. Should I leave the door open for my son if he ever realizes his mistake? Or should I accept that some relationships are beyond repair once greed has destroyed basic respect? We brought justice to a bitter betrayal and secured my peace. But now I stand at a quiet crossroads, and I turn to you, my friends, who have walked through decades of life and understand the true weight of family, boundaries, and self-respect. If you were standing in my shoes today, would you ever allow a child who betrayed your trust back into your life? Or would you accept that some chapters must remain closed for good? Please share your wisdom and honest thoughts in the comments below.